I've never been religious, but through personal experience, I've found that there's at least one verse in the Bible that is undoubtedly true. You reap what you sow. This all happened several years ago, back when I was in my early 20s. I was born and raised in NYC, the Big Apple, the city, the place where dreams come true. I never had a father figure, and my mom barely had time for me. So naturally, I did what a lot of wayward youth do in New York. I joined a gang. Though I was around a lot of dangerous individuals, I was never as bad as the rest of them. Even at age 11, I knew that taking lives for no reason was wrong. So I lived by a personal code. I wouldn't target children, the elderly, or mentally ill, no matter what the other guys did. I stuck with the easy things, like picking pockets, snatching purses, and robbing late-night subway riders at gunpoint, though the Magnum I carried never had a single bullet in it. I was still a fighter, though, and my buddies from school, Spikes and Nosebleed, always had my back when it came to rival gangs. The three of us were arrested quite a few times in our youth. Some guys grow out of it, but old habits die hard. And in our young adulthood, we found ourselves in the employ of a gangster who called himself Penqueno Serpiente. Serpiente was the head of the New York street gang Dominicans Don't Play, or DDP. It was a serious business, as is par for the course when it comes to big-time gangs involved with the smuggling of narcotics. With Nosebleed and Spikes being 6'4" and myself 6'2", none of us weighing less than 220. We were quite a formidable trio. Serpiente knew that I was not someone who was going to get anything done against our rival gangs on the street. Still, I was smart, quick, and my stepdad was a cop, so I was still viewed as an asset. Nosebleed and Spikes were actually two of the more ruthless of the set I was in as well. To give me something useful to do, Serpiente would send me with my two homies on seize missions. This meant kidnappings. Now, I know it doesn't absolve me of any guilt, but though I always participated in the kidnappings, I was never a part of any beatings or other things that took place. I would usually leave the spot and wait in the car, smoke a cigarette or listen to my iPod. I left the big boy stuff to my companions. It was a night like any other night. I showed up, late, to meet with Pequeno Serpiente in one of the trap houses. Nosebleed and Spikes, however, were already waiting for me outside in the old beat-up van we rode around in. Spikes was sitting in the passenger seat, the window rolled down. D-Man! Where you been at, Vato? Get your late ass in the van, man! I hopped in the back, leaning in between my two friends as Nosebleed put the vehicle in reverse. So, where are we going tonight, fuckers? Serpiente says that there's a gringo that owes him 3K, man. One of those smart-ass Wall Street poodles. Not that smart if he thinks he can hold out on Serpiente, laughed Spikes. He has a brother, man, continued Nosebleed as he ran a stoplight. A guy who rides the bus and is usually on duel at this time of night. Serpiente wants us to pick him up. He says if he doesn't hear from the gringo in the next 24, he wants us to carve him up. I shrugged. Okay, You Potus got some more tape? We were out last time, and I had to hear every scream that Chino made. Don't worry, man. We got some more damn tape. Now, let's go find this gringo and get moving. I'm hungry as fuck, said Spikes. I sat back on my seat, then jumped in surprise when my ringtone went off. Shit. Usually, I didn't bring my phone when we were on cease missions. I had forgotten to take it out of my pocket earlier. I like that ringtone, Cameron. Who is it, Kelly Clarkson? Asked Nosebleed as Spikes cackled. I flicked him off in the rearview mirror and stuck my phone under the seat. It was my stepdad calling. He was literally the last person I needed to be talking to right now. It didn't take us long to find the gringo. Serpiente had shown the guys pictures, and they recognized him as soon as they saw him. The man was tall, though not as tall as us, with ruffled blonde hair and a noticeable limp. He wore a white button-down shirt, black pants and a tie, as well as a big black backpack. The street was empty tonight, save for him, and the street lights were flickering, most of them having blown out. I was in the back, so I was the one who would have to do the seizing. Nosebleed pulled up close to the curb and I hopped out of the van's left side. The gringo noticed me far too late, and though he tried to run, he had a limp, and he wasn't going anywhere. I grabbed him as though he was a rag doll and hopped back into the van, my hand slapped over his mouth. I tossed him to the floor and slammed the door close, as Spikes threw a punch to stun him. The man was laid out, his glasses falling from his face. I went to work, tying his hands quickly behind his back with the old rope we usually used. I didn't bother tying his feet. This little guy was no threat to us. I then grabbed the new duct tape and sealed his pie hole. You're probably wondering what's gonna happen to you. There was no emotion in Spike's voice. He was looking back at the gringo, who, surprisingly, stared right back at him. Usually the victim would look away in fear, or would still be struggling to get free. The gringo did neither. He had eyes so grey, it was a wonder they weren't completely white. Your brother owes Pequeno Serpiente a lot of money, Spikes continued, turning back around in his seat. If he pays him back by this time tomorrow, you're good to go. But if he doesn't, then you're in for a hell of all night tomorrow. We were nearly at the decoy location. I felt strange, as though someone was watching me. And when I looked down, I noticed that it was the gringo. His grey eyes were pinned on me, like he had never seen a Mexican before. Maybe he couldn't see me clearly since his glasses had fallen off. Or maybe he was trying to remember my face. Either way, I was unnerved. I tried to look intimidating, but I figured it wasn't working. The gringo continued to stare at me. When we were close enough to the decoy, I threw a burlap sack over the gringo's face. Nosebleed then changed direction, and we were on a different route. This was something we did on the regular. We didn't want any of the victims, using time estimation or landmarks to figure out exactly where we were taking them. 15 minutes later, we pulled up to the holdout. Spikes tossed the gringo into a corner and sat down with Nosebleed, who pulled out a sack of Mary Jane. Usually I would partake, but something didn't feel right. I looked around the one-room warehouse that we were in. It was a maze of broken and old things, that people hadn't wanted. It had been a place where they made toys a long time ago, or something like that, I don't know. "Hey, I'm going back to the van for a minute, Vatos," I called to my homies, who waved me off as they smoked. I went outside to listen to my music, sitting in the back seat of the van. I laid my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. I woke up with a headache. Looking around, I wondered how long I had been asleep. It was still dark out, so it couldn't have been long. My hand hit something, and that was when I saw the gringo's backpack again. Curious, and more than a little bit nosy, I unzipped it. What I found inside made my blood run cold. There were various different tools and weapons that even a member of our gang wouldn't be seen carrying around. There were hammers, daggers, a butcher knife, an old wrench, and pliers that had old, dried blood covering them. But that wasn't all. There was also a red towel that, judging by the few patches I could see, had once been white. A woman's lock of hair, and, most unnerving of all, a Ziploc bag full of human teeth. I immediately dropped down to the floor to grab my cell phone. I tried dialing Nosebleed, but then I remembered that he didn't carry his phone on C's missions. Fuck. Someone banged hard on the window. Oh shit! I jumped up, pulling my empty pistol from my pocket. Pointing it at the window, I could see Spikes, who looked worried. "Spikes? Fuck, cabron, you scared the shit out of me." "D-man, I was wondering what the hell happened to you. You've been out here for hours, Mijo. Come on, Nosebleed fell asleep on me. I want to play cards or something." My heart stopped in my chest. "Wait, what? Spikes, you left Nosebleed in there? Sleep? With a gringo?" Spikes looked nonplussed. "Are you really worried about the gringo? What's that pooter gonna do to us, huh?" And that was when we heard him scream. I had never heard Nosebleed scream like that before. Spikes pulled his own gun from his pocket, and the two of us were running for the doors. We bust in only to find Nosebleed on his knees in front of an old, broken wardrobe, his face in his hands. "Hey, what's wrong, I say?" Spikes asked as I scanned the corner. The blonde man was gone. Only the old, weakened rope, now in 2 pieces, remained. "It was the gringo, man. He... Nosebleed looked up, and Spikes jerked back in shock. There was a shard of glass sticking out of his right eye, and blood was running hot down his face and into his mouth. "Hey, Geraldo, listen to me. I'm gonna pull it out. I need you to be still. Okay, homie?" Spike said, leaning forward. That was when the wardrobe flew open. The gringo leaped out of it, slamming a wooden plank, 4 nails sticking out of it, on top of Spike's head. Spikes fell over, stunned, and I backed away, turned and ran. I darted in between an empty bookcase and a couch and glass back. I could see the gringo leaning over Nosebleed, his arm moving vigorously back and forth. I couldn't see what he was doing, but Nosebleed was screaming even louder than he had been before. I ducked down behind the table and slapped at my pockets. Serpiente would hate me, but now would be the perfect time to call my stepdad. Nope. Fuck. My phone was in the van. I got some balls and crawled forward, peering over a desk. I could see a nosebleed lying in a puddle of blood. His face turned away from me. The gringo, however, had gone MIA again. Spikes was struggling to his hands and knees, the plank still in his head. "Where the fuck are you, you pinche puto?" he yelled, then forced himself to stand up. He slipped in Nosebleed's blood and fell back to his knees, then stared at the floor. The blood loss clearly affecting him. I could see the gringo by the doors now. He was wearing the burlap sack again, though now there were holes cut out for the eyes. He clearly had a chance to get out, to run for freedom. But this man had something else on his mind. His hands behind his back, he began slowly strolling towards Spikes, who, if he even knew he was coming, did not seem to care. "I'm gonna beat your friend to death with this crowbar," he yelled out, and I realized with a jolt that he was talking to me. "And then I'm gonna find you, and I'm gonna have some fun. You all thought you were gangsta, but your souls belong to me." I waited until he raised the crowbar, and then I ran, taking the path I had taken before. I yelped in agony and took a hard fall to the floor. I had stepped in a rusty bear trap. I knew that damn thing hadn't been there before. The gringo had known where I was all along. I had heard the sounds of someone dying before, but knowing that it was one of my boys from childhood made my eyes tear up. Still, survival instinct kicked in. I couldn't be shocked. I dragged myself to the doors and was out of them just in time for the gringo to drop the crowbar and turn around, looking in my direction. I hastened my pace as the doors to the warehouse slammed shut. I just had to make it to the van. If only I could reach one of the spare guns. The door swung open, and nearly 6 feet from the van, I gasped. The gringo was standing there, a baseball bat in his hand. "You vatos really did bring me to the wrong place. It's like a toy box in there." I heaved myself with all the strength I had left in me. I wouldn't reach the van in time. The gringo from hell was almost upon me. I instead pulled my empty gun on him, pointing it at his face. "Take another move, puto, and I'll blow your brains out your head." The gringo, who had paused momentarily, kept walking. Whether he knew my gun was empty or not, I will never know. But he was on me, striking me in the back with the bat. I received another whack right to the face, knocking a few teeth out. I then kicked at him with my good leg, knocking him off his feet. He landed on his back, and I slid over to the van. I wrung the passenger door open, grabbed the spare gun, and pointed it at the gringo's face, which was still hidden behind the burlap sack. I pulled the trigger. Then again, and again. After that night, my days as a gangster were over. And I don't know if Serpiente ever got his money. I don't know what'll happen to me if any of my former gang members see me on the streets. All I know is that all it takes is one dance with the devil to change a man's ways.